Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Neon. I am here with Geeky Sparkles.
Hello.
And we're going to do another Star Wars video because the media just can't stop talking about the Acolyte. They're actually doing more defense for the Acolyte than they're doing for Joe Biden at this point.
Yeah, no, it's really weird.
It's weird. But Forbes, it's so weird. They've got a dissenting voice at Forbes. They're saying the Acolyte, one of the biggest problems with it is that it ruins the Jedi.
It does. And actually, if you read this article, a lot of valid points. They bring up other franchises that have also ruined things, including Lord of the Rings. And it's really well done, and it spells it out, especially when we keep seeing these people like just having a meltdown. The Rap had one yesterday.
Yeah, we were going to do a video on this, and then we decided against it because it wasn't worth our time. But yeah, the author of this went on a bender and name checked a whole bunch of YouTube channels, and
because it's all just men.
It's all a bunch of men with
with ball caps,
angry dudes with ball caps screaming about Star Wars.
Yeah, it was like Echo Base and Geeks and Gamers.
I think it was Geeks and Gamers
and
Robot Head. Was that the other one? I don't know,
whatever
but
that one is.
Mostly she was mad because they name checked her, I guess, in some videos or whatever. But look, it's not worth apologizing or doing damage control for this show. It's terrible. Disney Star Wars is in a bad place right now. Forbes is calling it. Actually, Disney has ruined the Jedi. The Jedi are assholes.
In contradiction to Paul Tassi.
Yeah, they're and this is the same. This is why I tell people, like, it's not the site itself. It's usually the individual authors on the site and their different opinions. But yeah,
they get more views if they have two different opinions. So
that's true. Double dip.
Yeah. So this was put up today, or was updated at least today. No, it's today. This is Eric Kane who did this article, and it's actually a very interesting article. But before we get into any further?
Before we get into it any further, please subscribe for more pop culture, news, views, and rants, guys. You'll get a woohoo if you do.
Woohoo!
So let's talk about this.
Yeah, this is a good one, actually. So, like, remember when the Jedi were cool? I wouldn't blame you if you didn't. It's been a very, very long time. Long before Disney took over Lucasfilm and Star Wars, Indiana Jones, and Willow IP. They're even bringing up the prequels, how even the prequels kind of, they said too much of a good thing is too much. You know, less is more, and I think they're overdoing it.
I think that, like, I'll tell you, this is, you know, again, being people of a certain age, we remember a time before we really knew much about the Jedi. When we were kids, they were this kind of mythic, elusive superhero, like, oh my God, Jedi are magic. They're magic, and they're like super powerful, and they can do all this really cool stuff. And then the prequels came out, and it's like, oh, they're kind of bureaucratic and stodgy.
They're like in a boardroom, and this is boring. You know,
it's like that's not. I expected them to all kind of be out. I expected all the Jedi to be like ass kicking adventurers, and they'd all be out like just having like kick-ass adventures, you know, because they're
kick-ass adventures.
Kick-ass adventures.
Star Wars, the kick-ass adventures.
And they don't. They're like, oh no, we have to all be prim and proper and go through the proper channels and defer to this master and that master. And I'm like, no, I thought they'd just be out there doing cool stuff, Jedi stuff.
Well, that's what they're saying. They're like, you start out with like Luke being a Jedi, and he's like on his own fighting all these people, and now you have all these Jedi, and they're all dying because they're just throwaway. You know, basically they're not even good enough to win. So they bring it up by first. They talk about Galadriel, and they're talking about how when they had the movies, they're saying about how, you know, they did everything they could to keep her close to the character from the books.
Yes.
And then go ahead and scroll down. But when you get to the show, they said that when you had the movies, she was presented as faithfully as source material as possible, beautiful, ethereal, mysterious. And you come to the show, and then she's like the protagonist, and now she's, you know, instead of being mysterious and terrifying, she's petulant and boastful. You know, and stuff like that. She's like, you know, she's removing conflict. She's one thing. She's in conflict. She's another. And it's poorly written, and it's diluting Lord of the Rings, is what they're saying about the show.
Are you allowed to say that, or does that make you an actual racist, bigot, homophobe?
I'm sure this person's going to be called that because, you know, they're saying the same things that other people like us have been saying.
Yeah, well, that's one thing I will give Wired was, you know, you get to the very bottom of the article, and she's like, okay, yeah, sometimes they have a point. Sometimes the show is just terrible. And it's not good.
Yeah, but then after they make sure they lecture you on how terrible you are.
You know?
So yeah, they go talking about that. I said like the Jedi. Okay, they said the same thing with Galadriel applies to Jedi. the more Jedi were given on screen, the less awesome they become. It's not to say that young Obi-Wan wasn't cool or that I didn't enjoy Darth Maul, but as more movies have come out and more shows like Obi-Wan Kenobi and Ahsoka arrive falling flat, the Jedi have just gotten less and less compelling.
Can we say that both of those shows were terrible? Wow.
I mean, I didn't hate old and bitter Luke from the sequels, but the movies failed to really give him a worthwhile story. He didn't earn the rushed redemption arc he was given. Face it, Luke's story was over, Return of the Jedi. And maybe so were the story of the Jedi. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, the expanded universe did a better job of it than Disney's done. But yeah, I think that was the thing. The Jedi weren't special. And that was one of the disappointments I had, when the prequels did come out, was I'm like, man, the Jedi are kind of assholes and they kind of suck and they're bureaucratic and they just kind of sit around in chairs and they don't really do anything. Now, Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, we saw them fight, which was pretty cool. But, we were always kind of thinking that the Jedi were much more badass than they actually were. But also, when the prequels took place, it was like, this is the end of the Jedi. And this, so I kind of was like, okay, this is why the Jedi went extinct, because they were assholes. They were up their own ass. They really lost whatever it factor they had, and they were dinosaurs. But we're seeing that like here 100 years before the Jedi die out. That it's amazing they didn't die out before because they suck.
Right. Well, they said, interestingly enough, IGN did an article, too, talking about how the Acolyte Jedi went out like little punks in the 5th episode. So even people you had on your side,
wow,
I think she kind of lost them when she pretty much killed off all the characters, as far as the Jedi were concerned in the last episode. Spoiler. So they're talking about that. So I guess somebody over at IGN already had an article about that. We don't have to read through that, but...
what? How dare you? You sound like alt-right bigots.
I know, right? For two different places.
You probably wear a ball cap.
Forbes and IGN.
Forbes.
So apparently the 5th episode pissed people off, so they finally are actually calling it out.
I didn't get that far. The only episode of the show I've watched was episode 3, just to see how bad the lesbian space witch thing was. And it was cringy and lame and not worthy of Star Wars. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. But yeah, they talk about how these Jedi bought the farm and it.
Yeah, in the episode 5.
Sucks.
Like a whole bunch of them at once. And then they carry on Moss's master was killed in the first few minutes of the show. You mostly see her in flashbacks. And then they killed the Wookiee Jedi. I guess the Yord Horde's pissed off now. I don't know. When they talk about Alec Guinness, Obi-Wan Kenobi told Luke about the Jedi of lore, you might also recall where for thousands of generations, the guardians of peace and justice in the Old Republic, the Order sounded so awesome, mysterious, and legendary. The mysticism of the Jedi Order combined with a few scraps of knowledge we had about them, they fought in something called the Clone Wars. And basically, they're talking about how each time, with the prequels, they kept chipping away at the mythology, which actually makes them more boring. Yeah, they said the Jedi Council meeting, what feels like a conference room at the Radisson.
Yeah, it was, that was the thing, because at first it was kind of cool. It was like, oh, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, nobody seemed to realize, they kind of realized they were Jedi, like, oh, I think they're Jedi Knights, oh my God, Jedi. And it was always like the Jedi were mysterious. Even Anakin was like, oh, I've heard about the Jedi. I've never actually seen one. Nobody can kill a Jedi. And we went from that to like, oh yeah, they die like every day.
Well, I think it's always funny. Squid King mentions it all the time, like in the Force Awakens. It's not that long after, and it's like, no, we're supposed to have known about Jedi for hundreds of years. Now the Force Awakens happens, and the story is, and then Han's like, it's true, all of it, and Squid King's like, but it was only like 30 years ago or whatever. He's like, it wasn't that long ago. Why would they not know about it now, but they knew about the myth for hundreds of years? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's like, that doesn't even make sense.
I didn't like the way that the Jedi were like assigned to be guards, and they were basically space cops with laser swords. And it was
Kinda.
like, I always thought they were like the Knights Templar or something. Like they were like a more mysterious organization that they would go do good and whatever for the benefit of the galaxy, but there weren't very many of them. But it was like, oh my God, these guys are badass. If they show up, it's,
That's how it was until he decided to do Indiana Jones and thought that Knights Templar should be more focused on that one. I don't know. Because clearly they come from the same sources.
Yeah.
So, you see, less is more. Luke Skywalker dressed in black, walking calmly in Jabba the Hutt's palace and on Tatooine to rescue Han Solo is 1,000 times cooler than the hundreds of Jedis we've gotten since.
Yeah.
Actually, maybe the last time Jedi were cool was when Luke Skywalker showed up and to rescue Manda and Baby Yoda in the second finale of The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
You could just feel how powerful and unstoppable he was. The Force for a brief moment felt like it used to. Thank you. This is it. This is why people are so pissed.
Don't cry about it, though.
The rap chick's like, well, you know, it's been sucky for a while, and, you know, things change. Things have to change. And you don't understand that by changing it, you're making nothing like Star Wars. And you're ruining everything people loved about Star Wars. And I think that they hit it like right on the nail right on the head on this.
Wow, I didn't hate Rey, but she was like a less interesting Luke knockoff.
She was Mary Sue, and she was boring as hell.
So we can't. So now I guess we can say it, right?
Justice for Finn.
Yeah, I think now we can say it. Disney Star Wars, for the most part, has been a bust. They've had a couple of things here and there that have worked, that felt properly Star Wars, but for the most part, it's been a bust. It's actually, you know, run the Jedi through the mud. I would like to know, like, Order 66 wasn't very effective at all, was it? Because we've got all kinds of Jedi running around after right? Order 66.
They didn't do a very good job. And it was like everybody was in hiding, and they weren't hiding very well, were they?
My take on the Jedi was always like, I always thought they were supposed to be so secretive, and like a lot of people didn't believe in the Force because it was like, yeah, they could live their entire lives and never see a Jedi, ever. And now it's like they're running around all over the place. There's like tons of them.
Everything he's saying in this paragraph, stuff we've said. Okay, similar muddled and less compelling hero's arc and less impressive films. Force Awakens, was New Hope 2.0.
Yeah,
it was the same thing all over again.
Which I understand. Like, look, I can understand why they did it. They were trying to show people, hey, this isn't the prequels. But I'm like, yeah, but just, you know, repeating the original movie again is not exactly.
Well, I think one of the big mistakes they did was they promised to get the original cast back, didn't give it to him. And then what they had with the new cast, which he brings up here, they didn't act like the old cast. Hell, if the sequels had been good as the original trilogy, I wouldn't even mind that she was Luke 2.0, so long as they had given her companions as wonderful as Han, Chewie, and Leia, which they didn't. You thought they were setting them up, they were all going to be companions like that, but they weren't. It seems nobody in modern Star Wars outside Jon Favreau remembers the importance of good friendships in the series. Yes, thank you. Exactly.
Throwing more Jedi at us with their rainbow lightsabers does not help make Jedi great again.
Exactly.
It's especially true since we never got to even meet the 5 Mooks and the Sith kills off and the Acolyte, and barely spending time with the 3 key Jedi Masters either. There's too many Jedi. There's too many of them. Like, even during the height of the Republic, there shouldn't have been... I always thought there was like 1,000 Jedi total in the galaxy. Like, there should not be that many Jedi running around. It's supposed to be special, but again... The Force is for everybody now. You're not special anymore.
Yeah, it's like when everyone's special, no one is.
Right.
They said, so why do so many filmmakers and writers forget that killing off characters is only impactful if we care about the characters first? Wow. Yes, you need character development. We're given less. And when less is more, we're given far, far too much. Yes. Yeah. In our content-starved, somehow content-glutted modern entertainment space, more is always more. We must make all the spin-offs and prequels and remakes and adaptations we can. But who cares about fidelity to the source material if it means we can have more stuff for all these streaming services? Speaking of which, we need more streaming services, lots more. And they all need to charge more since they're having trouble making ends meet. But hey, you don't mind having less money in your bank account when they're all giving you more content, right?
Wow, the Acolyte is pretty bad, but if we make our next Star Wars show with even more Jedi, more Star Wars fans will watch. That's the mindset. That's what they, honest to God, think.
Add more diversity, of course, whether or not we're giving our diverse cast a good script to work with. Yes, exactly. The thing is, they keep giving them stuff that's shit. Like we said that before, like with Kelly Marie Tran, like Rose Tico was... her character was shit. She was just in there to be a foil to Finn, and if they'd given her good stuff, I don't think people would have hated the character. It's not
she
that
could have
hard.
been. She could have been a good character. I mean, the thing that gets me about all the characters that were introduced in The Last Jedi is like we barely knew the characters that were introduced in the movie before, and you gave us a whole bunch of new characters, and then you killed off the bad guy before you explained who he was. I mean, so many things wrong
I like
with that.
this too. Yeah, who cares about that? About giving them a good cast or a good script for the cast? This isn't about sincere representation. No, it's not. It's about getting more subscribers. We have to appeal to the demographics. The old demographic isn't paying the bills anymore.
Yeah.
More MCU shows. Give all the characters their powers, not just superheroes. It worked for Arrow and The Flash. No joke. Give them everything they ever wanted. What could go wrong? You don't earn it. You mean you earn nothing? Which is why we pointed this out before. People like anime and manga a lot because the characters don't just get handed things for the most part. They have to earn it.
Oh, wow. He really goes off here. He's like, yeah,
that's everything I've been saying.
Yeah.
Yes, I love you. It's everything I've been man saying?
He said, yeah, J.J. Abrams built a whole career on callbacks and endless pop culture references. So, yeah, he came up with Star Killer Base, which was the Death Star, but bigger. More Death Star equals better Death Star.
Thank you.
The return of Palpatine, because more Palpatine is better than leaving the most important climactic moment in all Star Wars movies alone.
They were trying desperately to win the fans they lost back. Because they were the ones that actually paid for shit.
More Palpatine is worth undoing the entire legacy of Star Wars and Luke and Anakin's entire character arcs. Also, look at those Star Destroyers. That's it. It's just like more.
It's too much. Yes, and it's just ruining everything. They're trying. Fans are tying their entire identities and products in unhealthy and aggressive and ruinous fashions. Basically, like politics. And I agree, but I also think that...
We talked about that. We actually talked about it yesterday.
But I also... The one that we didn't put up, you mean?
Yeah, we didn't put it up.
But the problem is, too, though, is the fact that if you don't like these things, if you say what this author is saying, which we've said many times, similar things the author is saying,
right,
you automatically are labeled, this author's probably going to get the same thing. It's not about, like everybody's acting out to unhealthily and aggressively. The problem is when you say, I don't like Rey, and you get called an internalized misogynist, and was it punta or whatever in Spanish, by a dude who was mad that I didn't like Rey, it doesn't exactly make me feel happy towards people like that. And I think people they've been just attacking anybody who doesn't like it in unhealthy and aggressive ways. And then when you fight back, you're the bad guy, you're the bigot. And it's bullshit.
Wow, this is interesting, though, because he's talking about the fantasy bubble, and we've talked about this before, and I actually talked about this with, I was on Peter Pischke's podcast, and we talked about this. Said the sudden rise of nerd culture into popular spaces, it's the popular kids who have co-opted nerd spaces, realizing there's cultural value to it now, much like corporations have realized there's so much money to be made, which is why and he talks about D&D taking off and Star Wars taking off, and all these things took off in the 2010s mostly. It was all these like Hollywood nerds. So when we talk about Hollywood nerds in like a derogatory fashion, it's because they sort of mainstreamed nerd culture, and with it came all these corporations kind of pouncing on this stuff to buy it up and make more of it, but it's not as good as it used to be.
No, and with that came groups of people who the tourists or whatever, or the new fans. And they're in there trying to gatekeep the fandom from everybody who's there saying they were gatekept out, which I can tell you for a fact, when it came to Dungeons and Dragons, when it came to Star Wars, that was bullshit. Women were not gate-capped out. I mean, I'm sure there's some women who have stories that they got quizzed or whatever. I'm sure that's happened. I'm not going to say it hasn't. But for the most part, you ask women about it, they weren't. I know every time I showed up to a space that was, for Star Wars, it was mostly men. And I'm sorry, Star Wars the audience is mostly men. That's just fact-based. Yeah. They would always be very welcoming to me. Very rarely did I have any issue. They were always like, oh my God, there's a girl here. Yay. And I bring my friend and there'd be 2 or 3 of us girls there. We'd be hanging out talking Star Wars. They thought it was great. They were thinking, that's why, one of the reasons Neon liked me when he first met me was because I knew more about Star Wars than he did. And I also knew what Street Hawk was. And he was like, oh my God, I'm marrying this one.
Someday I'm going to meet a girl who's going to know what Street Hawk is, and then I'm going to marry her, and we're going to have babies who don't know what Street Hawk is.
No, they do now because we told them like a week ago.
I had explained the Dukes of Hazzard too.
But I'm just like, they loved it. And D&D, everybody was welcome because people were like, and the same thing with Star Wars, like if you have people that are interested in it and they aren't making fun of you for it, because you'll understand back in the day, you got your ass kicked if you played D&D or if you, carried a Star Wars lunchbox around and things like that. People weren't like, when you're older, they did not accept it as much. So
when you're 42 and you're still rocking that Star Wars.
When you were a little kid, you had, people like, but when you were older, like Star Wars, in like the later 80s, early 90s, it wasn't cool.
Oh, I had a kid step on my Return of the Jedi lunchbox, and I was in kindergarten. He stomped it. It was my metal Luke Skywalker lunchbox, which I think if you guys have seen it, you've probably seen that one before. It's got Luke on the front, badass, black cloak wearing Luke Skywalker. Well, I guess it's technically brown, but he, badass Luke Skywalker, and then it had like the Ewoks on the other side. But yeah, the kid like laid it down on the concrete. We're waiting for the bus, and he stomped on it.
Should have picked it up and said "yub nub" and slapped him in the face with it.
Yub dub, motherfucker.
That's what I would have done.
That came years later when I actually learned to fight back. I used to get beat up a lot, and then I learned to fight back.
You know, I'm like tired of watching people get verbally beat up by these people that just come in and say that, you know, you don't let us in, you have to let us in. And you're like, okay, fine, cool, come in. We welcome everyone. Well, I'm here now. We don't want you, leave. And that's what's going on. And I'm sick to death of it. It's like, fuck you.
Yeah, we're not getting, I mean, this is the thing. It feels like nerds are actually getting pushed out of their own spaces and shamed for liking the old stuff. It's like it was...
But they're lied about, too. If you don't like what they like, it's because you're a bigot, even if you're not.
No, and that's like, I looked up bigot in Star Wars. Get this, on Google. There are 9.2 million results. Mm-hmm. Over 9 million results for bigot in Star Wars on Google.
We're one of them, though.
Yeah, we're one of the top results.
We were making fun of it. We're making fun of it.
But it's become this narrative now that it's like, oh, it's just the bigots trying to keep the Star Wars away from the new progressive people. It's like, look, the new progressive people, a lot of them are tourists. They're just whatever's trendy. And now the nerd shit is cooling off, and you can see it. It's cooling off. Now these companies are like, oh my God, what are we going to do? Oh, let's try to go back to the old fans and try to win them back. I'm like, you already did the damage. You're not going to.
Yeah, you sat back and let people talk But Ryan Johnson was telling people they were shit, and you let him do it.
Yeah, we're not coming back. We're not coming back. I'm not coming back. I don't know. You can go back if you want to go back. They do an Ewok Disney Plus show. You'd be all over that. As long
as it was good, because if it's like the other shows, I don't even want to know what they would do. It's like there's a bunch of, I don't know, there's a bear that identifies as an Ewok, or a leopard is identifying as an Ewok, or something like that.
Oh my God, it'd be like lots of furry fetish porn going on.
I don't know.
Oh my God, they're yubbing their nubs together. Full moon.
The last show had like a blonde girl in it, so we have to, it won't be a black girl because she's not a ginger. If she was a ginger, she'd be black.
Power of yub, the power of nub, the power of Ewok.
Oh my God. No, that would be the one to the many, because that would be like the end. There's one. Oh, isn't he cute? There's two. What's going on here? And then they hear chattering. There's many. Shit. And then they kick your ass.
You get a freaking a log in your face or something.
It's the kind of power of one to many I'd want to see. But anyway, we got to wrap this up.
Yeah, we're going to wrap it up. Please subscribe. We'll talk later.
Bye.